No.
Oh.
Oh,
We'll show you
no.
later. We'll show you
I have
later.
a feeling I can guess.
I may
where
have
that
mispronounced Kareem Hunt's name.
one- yeah.
The K sound carried over.
Alliteration will get you.
Yeah.
The next word was never mind.
I think I can guess.
Chiefs go 2-0 against two AFC North opponents and contenders in the AFC. Now they go to Atlanta to play the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. Is this a trap game? And who should the offense run through? Let's talk about it.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our incredible partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. Wednesdays are Matter Days here at KCSN. I'm Matt Swanson here with Maddie Lane and Matt Hamilton. Goodness gracious. Why don't you warn us before you coming in looking as dapper as you do, my man?
Oh, thank you.
No, Hamilton.
Oh, okay, my
Me?
bad.
I just got, I think Tucker might have one of these. I just got my OL Masterminds shirt on from this year.
Got the drip, the necklace out, man. We out, you're showing out. I respect it. I'm permanently trying to wear a hat every time I'm on one of these, and you're just out here just looking dapper as all get. I'm telling you right now, man.
I appreciate it. I mean, you guys always. I'm a little disappointed in Matty. He broke out the hair for us last week and covering that thing up now.
Let's see what we got going on. Nah, I mean, yeah, there you go. Let's go. We got it out.
There it is.
Slick back. It's a little slick back.
Got to match the vibe. It's a little slick back right now. No, we are here. The Chiefs are 2-0. Maybe not the prettiest of wins last week against the Cincinnati Bengals for now. And so, and not the best of wins, but Hamilton, you haven't got a chance to talk with the KCSN people about this and with us. So what were your thoughts over the Chiefs' victory over the Cincinnati Prodigals?
Had to throw it in. A couple of things. I mean, first of all, a lot of what you said, Matty, was very on point last week. Lou Anarumo, I think, had a fantastic game plan. But I was impressed with the Chiefs' patience. Kind of like we talked about, they were taking what the defense was giving them most of the time. We saw a few times where Mahomes was pressing a little bit, which I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, they stuck to the run game. It was actually the heaviest run percentage they've had in a game since that Monday afternoon COVID game against the Bills in the pouring rain.
Yeah.
Which I think says a lot.
Game. The Clyde Edwards-Helaire game. Yeah.
So yeah, and we know like that's been the knock on Andy since he was back in Philly. He'll abandon the run when he shouldn't. And, so I think that's a big takeaway here. And obviously now they have the issues with Pacheco, but the fact that they were willing to stick to that, I think was a big part of them picking up that win. And as for the defense, we did see the Bengals switch things up a little bit. Like we talked about, they went back to more under center pistol, turn your back to the defense, play action. That worked for a couple of big shots for them. I think we saw, when the Chiefs decided to dial up some blitzes, it worked pretty well. Trent McDuffie had a phenomenal game. So there's a lot of good there. Some sloppiness for sure. Those big mistakes from Mahomes you want to cut out for sure. But the Bengals brought, what was close to their A game, and the Chiefs handled it and came out with the win.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what matters, right? Is the Chiefs find a way to win. They've now beat two AFC contenders, and both of them are now sitting at 0-2, which is a remarkable feat in their own right. I mean, losing to the Patriots and the Raiders in between losing to the Chiefs. So that is just a tough sled. That's tough sledding for two AFC teams. That's part of the Chiefs' success is keeping these kind of teams down, putting themselves in advantageous positions to be in a good spot in the playoffs. And potentially, the one seed. These are two contenders for the one seed, and that's really important when you're going early in the year against two big opponents. Let's talk about the next week. Let's turn the page a little bit, and I'm sure some of the stuff from last week will still bleed into this. I'm sure, but Chiefs will be going to Atlanta to play the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. This is the game preview episode. We do both sides of the football. We'll start with the offense. I think a lot to unpack on the offensive side of the ball, reacting to what we just saw and hoping to see some things in this game against the Atlanta Falcons. Maddie, I know there's a few things that you saw from Mahomes that you really hope we see some changes over from last week to this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good place to start with this game is Patrick Mahomes. He is coming off of, you could easily make the case his worst game as a quarterback, his worst full game as a quarterback, as a starter for the Chiefs since he got here, right? If you look at his total passing yards, it's the lowest amount that he's had in any game where he has played 90+% of the snaps in that game. It just wasn't a good performance. He completes 7 passes beyond the line of scrimmage. That's not great. Those 2 interceptions, neither one of them, I don't think were particularly good balls to throw or anything like that. So yeah, we're coming off of one of Mahomes' not great performances, and credit to Big Lou for putting him kind of in that blender. He does that the majority of the times these two teams play. He makes Mahomes lack confidence in a way that very few other teams can. So now it is up to the Chiefs to get back on a track as they go up against a Falcons defense, which has been better this year than I think a lot of people were going to think coming into it. But they're still not the same level of what you would expect to get from Big Lou, the same level you'd expect to get from the Ravens. So I think it's a good situation for the Chiefs and specifically Mahomes to maybe get back on track. However, I mean, he's got to start it right now. He's got to be patient. Like Matt Hamilton said, he got a little impatient, it seemed like, against the Bengals. Look at who this coaching staff comes from with the Falcons. That defense is all about stopping explosives, and they slap 2 safeties on the back end that have had success against Patrick Mahomes in the past, picking him off. Bates and the Broncos.
Justin Simmons.
There we go. Justin Simmons, blanking on the name. But yeah, they got both those guys back there. So you can't get impatient and try to force the ball against this defense. That's what they're waiting on. But I also think there should be a little bit more room to operate in this one compared to the last 2.
Yeah, and it's interesting watching that Falcons defense going through that tape. It's tough because they've played a couple of teams stylistically who I think are pretty different. Obviously having to worry about Jalen Hurts and what he does in the run game, and then week 1, Justin Fields. Same thing. But they mix things up pretty well. They're about 50-50 man and zone. When they play man, they are really sticky too, which is interesting. I'd be interested to see how much they do that against the Chiefs, especially like you talk about when you have 2 great seasoned safeties back there. It's something they can maybe get away with. So that's interesting. Matthew Judon is starting to round into form a little bit. We saw him have a big impact on Monday night. So this Falcons defense, those late additions of Judon and Justin Simmons, I think it's taken a little bit for them to get going because they added them fairly late into camp. It was actually when we took our training camp visit there with Up and Adams, it was we were there for their first practice. And that was the second to last training camp that we went to. So, it's taken a little bit for them to get acclimated, worked into things, but you're seeing it start to build now. And that defense is pretty scary, especially with Grady Jarrett back, missed the second half of last year. They're gonna make things tough on this Chiefs offense.
They definitely have. It's a very veteran group too. Like there is a lot of veterans on that side of the ball, and they've put together. This would be even scarier if it was 2021. And I'm not discrediting what they have now. I'm just saying that they've made sure to bring in a lot of veterans, and I think it's been smart moves to add some of these guys, onto this team. So, it's definitely going to be a challenge. You're right. I don't foresee them playing a lot of man coverage, a lot of 2-man coverage. I don't think they want Patrick Mahomes running around all over him either, because Mahomes is really killer about killing that 2-man stuff. So, and I don't know if they really have great athletes, to be able to chase Mahomes down at a super high level either. So, if they're going to try to do that, but yeah, this is a veteran savvy defense. They did a pretty good job, and you're right, stylistically, especially the Eagles didn't have AJ Brown. They did a pretty good job against that offense, and obviously did pretty good job against the Pittsburgh Steelers the week prior. So they're definitely going to present a challenge. I do think it's a great point, Matt. There's a couple ball hawks in the back end of that where hey, look, Jesse Bates is, I think, one of the best safeties in football. Justin Simmons has been that in the past, so like this is definitely one of the better safeties, but he's definitely someone you've got to pay attention to. And honestly, Jesse Bates is one of the guys that made that that frustrated Mahomes a lot when he was in Cincinnati. He's one of the guys that was kind of a key cog in why the Bengals were what the Bengals were, a few years ago defensively too. So this is a big challenge for him. Do you think that the Chiefs are able to get some plays down the field going a little bit here, Maddie? Though, like, do you think that they're going to be able to find some opportunities?
This is the tricky part, right? Like, as of right now, Patrick Mahomes is the lowest quarterback according to Next Gen Stats in terms of average intended air yards in the NFL. Now, a lot of that is weighed down by this past game against the Bengals, where they threw so many passes behind the line of scrimmage. And realistically, if you go back and look at their previous matchups against the Ravens and the Bengals, this is a kind of common theme with the Chiefs against those teams. They will take the check down type of plays a lot more frequently. So we will see what happens this year. This will be like the first test against a defense that doesn't routinely see them, that doesn't have a game plan kind of at the ready to go up against this team. I think they need to, though. Like, it's one thing to use Xavier Worthy to create space. It's one thing to get this one-off shot play to Rashee Rice on a great play downfield where he scores this long touchdown. You can scare teams with the deep passing game, but at some point too, you do got to attack the intermediate areas a little bit better than they have been able to this year. You got to actually try not to force the ball into them, but you got to design up some good looks. And I don't know if they've done them or when they have done them. See, let's call it the first interception of the game against the Bengals. They had a nice corner route, I thought, open on either side versus the coverage you want, and Mahomes just doesn't rip it. He instead looks to go to Travis Kelce on what it sounds like was an option route, according to Andy Reid, where they were just a little off, or he doesn't see the coverage rotating under it. It's like there's stuff that's been left out there. And I think this is one of those games where you want to get on the same page. You want to come out with more confidence and really try to put not necessarily deep shots, but get working in the intermediate area of the field. Get back to attacking the middle of the field like you did against the Ravens and kind of find your groove, Hamilton.
Yeah, and Matt, we talked about that play. I think, I really do. When you look at it, I think he was trying to feed Kelce. He was trying to get Kelce going, and he thought if he looked things off, it would hold the linebacker and he'd be able to make that throw. It didn't happen. He didn't react to it and adjust to it, and force that ball in. And that's something. I think the one area when you look at with him over the years, obviously he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not trying to say anything otherwise, but when you look back with Tyreek, sometimes he would get himself in trouble because he'd try to get Tyreek going. He almost cost him that Browns game trying to get Tyreek 200 yards a couple of years ago, forcing that ball in when, away from the concept of the play when things were wide open there. So, he just has to get back to taking what's there in this passing game. And you're right, exploiting the intermediate areas. And I think the play design too, can do a better job of attacking those intermediate areas of the field. Because I do think this Falcons, if there is a weakness to this Falcons defense, it's that linebacker group. Mm-hmm. And I think they can attack them there. It was also interesting. We were talking to on the show today, Deshaun Jackson, and we asked him about Xavier Worthy in this Andy Reid offense. Obviously similar type of player, both played in this offense. Like, what does he need to do to get going? And he said, it was interesting. He was talking about how, people are going to be physical with you because you're undersized. They're going to try to get a piece of you, and you can't go in with a predetermined plan. You have to react and you have to find space. So I thought that was an interesting little piece of advice and something that, we're going to need to see how Worthy adjusts how defenses are playing. And if he can, do things a little bit off script. And we know Mahomes is great at that once they get on the same page. It's not, this offense isn't just totally by the book, the way things are drawn up. So we'll see if Worthy can get going a little bit here more this week.
We've seen, this team, mix some things up the last couple weeks with, offensively. You saw them get into the empty stuff a little bit more in week one. You saw them feature Rashee Rice a little bit more in week one than you saw in week two. And when you're talking about trying to attack linebackers, I think Rashee Rice is an excellent candidate to see a lot of targets and someone you try to exploit those linebackers with, Matthew Lane.
Yeah. And I think we kind of were going down this direction too, when Hamilton brought up, like, one of the flaws with Patrick Mahomes, again, best quarterback in the league, not saying anything negative, but one of the flaws is he has played his entire career with Travis Kelce, and that has been his go-to guy. When they need to get something going, there has definitely been a lot of Travis Kelce routes, which is, hey, Travis, go get open. And I'll linger on this read to see if you break it open. You can have the freedom to do kind of whatever you want. Or even if it is a designed route, you maybe have me for an extra beat before I move on to somewhere else to see if you get there. And that's fine and dandy. It's worked out fantastic for this team. We might be getting to the point, though, where you can't rely on the Travis Kelce route. The Travis Kelce option route isn't an automatic win anymore. It's no longer what it was a couple years ago. And maybe come playoff time, like it kind of was last year, it can come back around. But we saw them try to go to that a couple times against the Ravens. We saw them try to go to that a couple times against the Bengals, and it wasn't there. And I think it actually let them leave a lot of plays on the field. We talked about the interception already, but go look at the Chiefs' 2-point conversion. Go look at the Chiefs' first trip down into the red zone, their last pass play before they have to kick the field goal. They just run a curl flat with Kelce and Rice. Rice is open right on the in line or the goal line, and it's just a quick turnaround. The window's there to throw it. Mahomes is looking at Kelce swerking out to the flat instead. They've thrown that pass. Yes, I did. They've thrown that pass to Rice or to Kelce. So you're messing me up now, Kent. Come on. They've thrown that little curl right on the goal line to Kelce numerous times. You throw it as soon as he turns around, low and away from the help. They didn't trust Rice with it. Same general concept in the 2-point conversion. You go later in the game. There's just times where Rice is getting open, and it seems like Mahomes is a little locked in on Kelce, waiting for him to get open. I get it. Great player. He's been there. I think it's time that this offense needs to shift a little bit away from that and get going with Rashee Rice and let him swerk.
And it's Matt Swanson, not Ken. Get it right. Come on. But I will say what was swerking for the Eagles against this defense when you really look at it, most of their big plays in that game came kind of off script when Hurts was able to extend plays. There were a lot of big opportunities there, which obviously we know that's part of what Patrick does best. And obviously it's hard to bake that into the game plan, but it's just something interesting to note. There was a lot of time back there for Hurts in that game, like the Falcons. There were a few times where they were able to get back there, but when he had time, he was able to hold on to the ball, extend plays, and they were able to hit big plays off of that. So, again, to your point too, Ken, if we'll see how much man they want to play. If they are in man, that's a tall order to have to stick with those guys for that long, especially when you're talking about Rice, how slippery he is, and the speed of an Xavier Worthy.
I think, some teams will, there's been 2 weeks of tape here, I guess, with Travis Kelce and the 2024 version of him. And I do think that there's still plenty of, challenges, I think, for offenses to try to handle, this receiving core. It'd be nice if Hollywood Brown was there, but there's still some talent there. But there might be some teams that, maybe mess around and find out about what happens with Travis Kelce if you try to man him up. And maybe the Falcons are a team that just said, let's just take it to him and see what happens. Sometimes teams get that itch to just try to be aggressive in that kind of situation. So maybe that's something that can happen there. But I do agree. Like I would like to see Rashee Rice, involved a little bit more. I'm curious to see what this version of the Chiefs looks like this week, because yes, there were some things that were carryovers week over week, but it almost feels like they're still trying to kind of set the stage for 2024 a little bit about what they're going to try to do and how they're going to try to attack and the diversity in which they're able to attack. The run game is going to be something to pay attention to as well. Out is Isaiah Pacheco for 6 to 8 weeks here after the surgery is successful today, which is good. That's good news. But going to be missing him for an extended period of time. Carson Steele, Samaje Perine expected to get the workload. Andy Reid keeps it open for recently signed Kareem Hunt to be available this week. We'll see about that. But Hamilton, what do you think changes, if anything, for what the Chiefs try to do in the run game with Isaiah Pacheco out?
Yeah, I mean, it is a big loss. There's no way around it. I mean, I think if there's any team that can overcome it, it's this one. But he's been such an integral part of what they do, and obviously we saw it last week. He was huge, and Carson Steele's looked good, put the fumble aside. But can he take on that kind of a workload? Perine really has never been the number. He's always been kind of a secondary guy, third down back, great in pass protection, can catch the ball. But he's never really been that guy either. I mean, I guess they can probably skate by with a running back by committee type situation. But, especially when it comes to closing out games, having Pacheco as that battering ram has been such a huge thing. Like, that's something to look for. It's a tall order to replace a guy like that when you look at what's on this roster right now. It is.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, like, I hope Pacheco's okay, and I don't want this to be like he's not as good as we think he is thing, but I do think there's a little bit of Chiefs fans that Isaiah Pacheco runs in a very fun way. He is fun to watch play football. There's so much energy and excitement there, but when you really dig into a lot of his advanced numbers as a running back, and I do also think a lot of this is Chiefs-centric because of how they practice and how the offense functions, he also doesn't create a lot of extra yardage beyond what is blocked. You always look at his yards over expectation, the forced missed tackles, averages, and all that stuff. It's pretty middle of the pack or even below. So he's very much a runner for the Chiefs that has kind of gotten them what's blocked for and then not much more. And I think you kind of saw that even against the Bengals. The Chiefs are having a ton of success running the ball. Their longest run still ended up only being 11 yards. It was still just kind of not necessarily first contact, but he wasn't making guys miss and then picking up large chunks after that. There was none of the explosive runs or anything. And so I think they will miss him. The ability to put Pacheco out there, trust him on any down, on any type of run, to get positive yards, to run downhill, to hold on to the football is very important. But just the pure efficiency of the run game, I don't know if there will be a huge drop off from him to Carson Steele to Kareem Hunt once he gets caught up. There'll be a little bit. I just don't, or even Samaje Perine filling in. I just don't know if it's going to be a drastic drop off in terms of what the running back by himself creates. I think what is worth monitoring, though, in the meantime, until Kareem Hunt's there's how limited is the run game. With Pacheco, they could run whatever they want. It's on PFF this right now. Isaiah Pacheco has run 17 zone runs, so inside, outside, mid zone, and 17 gap or man scheme runs, so all your powers, all your pulls and stuff. 50-50 split. Carson Steele, 1 zone run, 7 gap runs. And that zone run, I can almost guarantee you, was just downhill. I can almost guarantee you it was a bang right into the hole and not much else. And that's fine. That's the type of runner he is as a fullback, but that does limit your versatility a little bit and what the Chiefs like to do. So that's like the one thing with the run game I really have my eye on is, do they lose some of their run game versatility without Pacheco until they can get somebody else caught back up to speed?
And we saw Steele run a little bit more zone in preseason, and he looked fine doing, even in some of the wide zone stuff. But like some of your toss plays, I don't think are in the playbook this week. I don't think that's going to be the case. But we saw him run a little bit more zone in the preseason, and it did look capable. It looks like he'd be able to run it. But you're right, like that's not what they've called for him at this point. There's a tendency there for them to run more gap, like you're just talking about. So he's going to have to, if he's going to carry the load, he's going to have to run more zone concepts. Like that's got to be a more frequent split. You can't just go out there and run gap when he's in there.
Listen, just like he's also forced 4 missed tackles on only 9 carries.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there. There really is. Yeah. Like there's like in like some of the play calls are a little bit more situational, but watching him hurdle that guy on that play and turn a 2-yard gain into 7 yards or whatever it wound up being, that was impressive. That was good. Yeah. That was something that you want to see out of him. So I'm fascinated to see how much of a workload he gets. You can't, like you said, you can't have tendencies with Samaje Perine either, because you can't just throw screens to him every time he's in the field. So that'll be fascinating as well. Let's go some offensive players to watch here. Matt Hamilton, give me a player to watch on the offensive side of the ball for the Chiefs against the Falcons.
I've gone with some pretty deep polls the last couple of weeks. I've taken some shots. Today I'm going to go with a little bit bigger of a name than Jared Wiley and Samaje Perine. I'm looking at Travis Kelce. So far, good. It hasn't looked great. Let's be honest. He hasn't been getting open. Matty, you talked about it, the way that we've seen in the past. And as we talked about too, I think this linebacker group can be exploited. We'll see how much they bring those safeties down to try to deal with him. But I'm looking at this as a game where maybe he can get going a little bit here. I also wonder with him and this Chiefs team, like with how much they've done, like they know they're going to the playoffs in this division. It's all about the three-peat and preserving and staying healthy and all that. So I wonder how much of it, not to make excuses, but how much of this is like, they're just ramping up. They're just getting going right now. They know they can win games. It's insane to say this at the NFL level, and they have the luxury of this. But at some point, we got to see him start ramping it up a little bit. And I don't know. I have a feeling we might see a little bit more out of him this week than we've seen in the past couple of weeks, which, I mean, may not be saying much because you haven't seen anything. But I do think we see Travis Kelce have a maybe not a big game by Travis standards, but a much bigger game than what he's been having.
It's the right matchup for it. We kind of touched on it. That Falcons linebacker group is probably not the best suited to cover him. And if you're going to protect everybody else with those two deep safeties, there's going to be some space. Kent, do you want to go before me? Because I have a couple options, and I want to give you the chance to have the low hanging fruit if that's the route you were going.
You got it, man. Just go ahead.
No, it's all you. Go ahead. I got a fun one. I'm hoping you take the low hanging fruit.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the tackles, the left tackles in this game. So I'm just fascinated to see, one, who the starting left tackle is for this game. I have a feeling it's probably still going to be Kingsley Suamataia. I think they throw him right back out there. That would be what I guess. But I'm fascinated to see who is the starting left tackle. If it's, Wanya Morris, what does he do in the passing game, catching and running routes this week, most importantly. But secondly, how he is as a pass protector. It's just, if it's a large sample size of him in a live game action, any improvements from what we saw from last year to this year, if he's going to be, how he's able to hold up. There's a reason Kingsley Suamataia was awarded the starting position heading into the season. So if they are moving on to Wanye, big test for him, big opportunity for him. And if it's Kingsley, I mean, if you're lining up against, Matthew Judon, he can give you some fits. If he's having to line up across from Matthew Judon a lot, that's another guy that's good with his hands. It could give him some additional problems there. That was a big issue for Kingsley in this last game. And, he's going to get right back on the horse and get challenged right again with another, veteran savvy, physical, good technician over there if Matthew Judon's lining up over there. So I'll pay attention to that. That is, so that's but give me the tackles. All right. What do you got, Lane?
No, I wanted to make sure that we touched on that. So I didn't want to do, I wanted to talk more about Carson Steele because Carson Steele's my guy to watch. I wanted to make sure we did the left tackle talk. I considered some other offensive linemen. That interior really kicked ass last week. I thought they were good versus the Ravens. I think this is another pretty good matchup for that interior offensive line group, but give me Carson Steele. We talked a little bit about the run game, and that's part of it, right? Like, I think that having a week to know that you don't have Isaiah Pacheco is going to allow you to get Carson Steele either back situated to the zone run game or to build it around a little bit more gap stuff and let him get downhill. Even if it is zone stuff, you're still probably not going to have as much trying to hit the outside. You're not going to have your aiming point for some of your outside zone stuff outside the tight end, right? You're going to try to adjust things to fit his skill set. So I feel good with the run game. It's the targets. It's the passing game targets here that we got. That Pacheco has 8 targets in 2 games. That's a lot. And I know P. Ryan's going to get the majority of the third down work. That makes sense. That's what they brought him in for. But when you're going to have some other running back out there on first down, second down for these early downs, you still want to have the threat of a running back as a receiver. And we've seen the Chiefs, the way they're getting defended right now, they just want to get the ball out to someone's hands, a playmaker in space. If you're giving them the flats, they're going to take it. We're going to see Carson Steele get some targets, I would assume, sometime. Like, let's see what he does with those. Some of those I saw Miami do it first last year, and they did it again this year, where you send a guy out and essentially you run 2 flat routes, but the lead guy's just blocking. That's all they're doing out there. The Chiefs haven't really hit one on the good timing yet, but I want to see one of those thrown to Carson Steele. I want to see a cornerback have to come up and tackle Carson Steele in the open field. Like, that's what I want to see. This guy is a bruiser, and he runs downhill, so I think they could do some fun stuff with him. So I just want to see the usage of Carson Steele. And hey, listen, I'm pretty sure that One Tree Hill is based in North Carolina, so we got this. We got this covered.
That is it for the audio only. Sophia asking, why does Maddie look like he just walked off the One Tree Hill set? So
that's why Kit couldn't survive.
There you go.
That's why Kit couldn't survive in a game of 1-on-1. I just got that One Tree Hill experience in the back pocket.
Speaking of exploiting linebackers, we're going to take a break and talk about the defense right after this.
Perfect.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Fellas, it's the best time of year. Football is back, and we're talking NFL Sundays, college football Saturdays, and that glorious grind of fantasy football lineups. This is where you can take your inner GM and bring it to life by setting that perfect fantasy roster, screaming at the TV, and making last-minute waiver moves that either make you a hero or the guy everyone makes fun of in the group chat. But listen, while you're over here making sure your fantasy team is dialed in, don't let your personal grooming become the guy that gets left on the bench. And let's be honest, fellas, nobody wants to fumble their grooming routine. That's where Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 comes in, acting as your all-in-one grooming playbook. From keeping things sharp below the waist with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, to taking care of those rogue nose and ear hairs with the Weed Whacker 2.0. Join the over 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by heading over to manscaped.com. Use the code KCSports for 20% off plus free shipping. Trust me, you'll be drafting the real MVP of grooming this season. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code KCSports at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code KCSports at manscaped.com. Stay on top of your grooming game and be ready for anything the season throws your way.
Thanks to everyone hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate you getting you ready for Chiefs Falcons on Sunday Night Football. And now we move to the defensive side of the ball, talking about the defense coming off a pretty solid performance against the Cincinnati Bengals, and now presented with a different challenge with Kirk Cousins in the Atlanta Falcons. And one thing I just want to say off the top about Kirk. So we saw him last couple weeks, and he was not particularly good in that first week back. Definitely looked rusty coming out of the Achilles, and even stretches of that game against the Eagles didn't look particularly good either. Still struggling, still short on some throws, kind of skipping some balls there in the intermediate range. Maybe not driving as consistently off that foot. Man, watching him uncork things and just kind of let it loose in the 2-minute warning, he looked a lot better. With the game on the line, he let it loose, and he was looking a lot better. I think there's, at least for Chiefs fans, some level of concern that was a moment for him to come out of it and kind of snap out of that rust, that offseason rust, and, kind of recovering from that Achilles. I think that 2-minute warning might have been a big step in his, getting back to himself, Hamilton.
Yeah, and you did. That's a confidence building moment that we saw. He was able to get the ball in rhythm. I mean, the Eagles did him a lot of favors with the way that they played that last drive, but that's a different story. You're right. I mean, he looked sharp. He was decisive. He was getting the ball out. What we saw for long stretches of that game before that, what we saw in the Steelers game was a guy who looked really uncomfortable, who looked a little unsure of himself. Like he might still be not that the Achilles is still bothering him, but that it's on his mind. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of the takeaway I had from watching him in those games. And that drive to end the first half, when he had some opportunities in the red zone to try to squeeze the ball in, he's just sailing out of the end zone. Like that's really not Kirk Cousins. I was surprised to see that from his mentality is he's going to try to take some chances, fit some balls in where he can, make some plays. So, it was alarming to see that. And you're right, maybe that drive will get him back into it. But I do think the key for the Chiefs defense against him is going to be to make him as uncomfortable as possible. He's really struggled when he's been under pressure, when he's had a clean pocket. And obviously every quarterback wants a clean pocket and is going to be more successful with a clean pocket, but he looked panicky under pressure these first 2 weeks. When things were not clean for him, it looked really, really ugly. And the Chiefs, looking at some of the numbers their first 2 weeks, when they haven't brought pressure, when they've rushed 3 or 4, they have the third highest passer rating allowed in the NFL right now. When they do send pressure, it's 8th. They have the 8th lowest pass rating allowed. So I do look for Spags to dial it up a little bit, try to make Cousins as uncomfortable as he possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, one simply doesn't put Kirk Cousins in the pressure cooker of a primetime game and expect him not to step up, right? Like that's what we've known about Kirk for you. Oh, no? maybe this is like a clock strikes midnight and we're about to turn back into a pumpkin thing for Kirk when he has to play back-to-back primetime games. We'll find out. He did come along for the 2-minute warning. I do think the Eagles made it a little easy on him. So it's good for him. If you were a Falcons fan, you feel good about what you saw. If you're going up against the Falcons, though, and you want to focus on, I don't know, the first 3.5 quarters, you're probably still not that terrified of what Kirk Cousins looked like throughout the majority of that game. And especially if you go back to week 1, where the Steelers were having a lot better luck getting pressure on him, especially quicker early. And like, you can just tell the lack of mobility is there in his game still. And it's not even just a lack of mobility, it's a lack of trust in his own mobility. He doesn't even feel overly confident sliding in the pocket and then really driving off that leg right now. So you just kind of make him move a little bit right now, and you're getting a lot of places with it. They are doing a better job of giving him answers, like quick answers, quick outlets for the ball. And I think if you're like from the Chiefs' perspective, that's where it's the most scary. That's where they've struggled. The Chiefs have done terrible against tight ends, terrible against running backs in the passing game so far this year. And maybe some of that has been dedicating extra attention to a Jamar Chase. Maybe some of that has been extra attention having to go to a Lamar Jackson. I don't know if the Falcons, they have very good playmakers. We're going to talk about them. They have very good guys, but I don't know if they have a guy that's Jamar Chase yet. I don't know if they have a guy that's Lamar Jackson's scrambling ability yet. So you might finally get to see the Chiefs defense really open up the entire playbook and not have to focus or emphasize so much one specific other player. And that should allow Spags to blitz more. That hopefully allows the defensive ends to just bend their ears back. You don't have to bracket a specific wide receiver anytime he's not on Trent McDuffie. So I am intrigued to see what curveballs the Chiefs have, because I do agree through 2 weeks so far, the pressure rate when not blitzing, it's pretty much Chris Jones save us, or the pass is probably going to be complete to a tight end, usually outside the numbers, and we're going to be a little late from the safeties or the linebackers closing on it. And this is one of the teams that can probably hurt you in that way.
Yeah, I mean, they still have some talented players that kind of fit the description of what the Chiefs have struggled with running backs out of the backfield and tight ends. Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, both dynamic players, one more than the other at this point in their careers, but still, Kyle Pitts is a very talented player that maybe hasn't, lived up to the 4th pick overall billing, but still has the kind of ability that you have to honor and respect, especially against a struggling linebacking core. And I think, both Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson are going to be players that the Chiefs want to try to take away. I think, the good news for the Chiefs in some capacity, I think, is like, we'll see how much under center that the Falcons do this year or this week. I think they've maybe gone away from a little bit more than what Kirk has typically liked. And I think, maybe it's a comfort level with the Achilles coming out of that a little bit and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think Steve Spagnuolo's someone that you want to turn your back to very often if you're a quarterback, right? And so I think that's going to be something of interest, is what, under center gun, what are the Falcons trying to do to help keep eyes on it for Kirk Cousins. And early down success, I think, is going to be really big for this team in the run game. Steve Spagnuolo is going to have to be in his bag to stop the run early. And I think he's going to have to, good news is he's got the ultimate run stopping weapon in Leo Chanel at his disposal, or he can line him up at 3 tech or wherever he chooses. But I do think early down success is going to be pretty important for this team, and putting Kirk Cousins behind the 8 ball, especially with some of the mobility issues that definitely exist, Hamilton.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bijan is, he's a tough one to stop. I think the Chiefs run defense overall, I think, Lamar Jackson scrambling and running around at the end of that game has kind of skewed the numbers. Obviously last week they had a lot more success against a Bengals attack that can, I think we're going to see them run the ball. I think they're going to be better than I think people think at this point in the season. So I was impressed with the way they were able to basically completely shut down Zach Moss in that game. But yeah, Bijan is a different animal. I don't think, from what I was hearing when I was down there at Falcons camp, I don't think we've even seen him yet fully kind of unleashed with some of the plans they have for him in that offense. So I think that's going to be something to watch too.
Great.
Yeah.
Good week for it now. Hey.
Yeah. But yeah, he obviously started getting it going against the Eagles. He was incredible against the Eagles, and Tyler Algier is nothing to sneeze at either. He's been a 1,000-yard rusher in this league. He brings a different element there. He had a lot of success against Philly too. So I agree with you guys. I think that is going to be the key to the game. And I was thinking, as we were talking about Cousins too, not to bring everything back to my visit down there, but I did notice he was on the field for a very long time after practice, a lot of extra band work. It was his birthday, and all he's doing is sitting there for a half hour working with resistance band. So it does give you that sense of he's still kind of working through, working through things, getting back from a mobility standpoint to where he wants to be. And yeah, we were there too. It was the day of, I don't know if you guys saw the stuff with his playlist, but
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
it was
gosh.
that day.
That playlist, I tell you what, that fit perfectly. I think our all three of ours kind of time high school era.
Oh yeah. As soon as I heard,
Don't age me with you.
Oh, Matt's been 29 for 5 years and refuses to acknowledge it. But anyways, or sorry, Lane does. Anyways, sorry, what were you saying, Hamilton?
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, it was funny. Just as soon as it was like cameras down period, it was all like hip hop and like current day stuff. And then as soon as or no, when cameras were up, as soon as cameras went down, all of a sudden everything shifted. And as soon as Stacey, like I was like, this has to be for Kurt. And as soon as Stacey's mom came on, I was like, yep, I know what they're doing here. That was the dead giveaway.
Oh man, it's the Costco playlist. Yeah, so the run game is going to be big. Bijan's been excellent so far this year, running the ball. We know he's a great receiver. I will say, like, the good thing for the Chiefs is their run defense against running backs has been pretty solid this year, and especially for a team like the Falcons, who I believe so far have been in 12 personnel. It looks like the third most in the NFL. That does mean more Leo Chenal's on the field, and that for the Chiefs' run defense is great. And also, Drew Tranquil has had his ups and downs in coverage this year. He's been pretty good against the run. He's having no problems coming downhill and stuffing lead blockers or pullers or anything like that. So I feel like the Chiefs' run defense this year against pure running back handoffs might be pretty good. And especially when you're not overly concerned about containing Kirk Cousins in the pocket, there's not going to be a lot of boot action coming. They're not going to be pulling Kirk out. I think that was the whole thing. Was TJ Watt kind of realized that in week one and was like, oh, I don't even have to respect it at this point in time. Right. So I feel like the Chiefs' run defense should hold serve. And as long as they can do that without having to sell out to stop the run, you can kind of slow down the play action passing game, which for this style of offense, that's what they want to get to. Will they do it against the Chiefs with Steve Spagnuolo ready to go? Maybe, maybe not. The whole point of getting them in base is that keeps you a little bit more basic, but we've seen that hasn't stopped Spagnuolo before. He's still going to put Leo Chenal at the 3 tech because why not? And just let him take on a double team in the middle of a run play. Yeah, like what are we doing here? So I like that matchup. What scares me a lot more, and I know he hasn't been as good, but boy, the Kyle Pitts just out routes. Kyle Pitts this, Kyle Pitts that. Like that's all they should flood you with. We just watched Mike Gesicki go absolutely all over the place against the Chiefs. They didn't really have a great answer for it, right? They just kind of let him do whatever they want. So yeah, I do think that the going with the tight ends, especially Kyle Pitts getting out there, or even Bijan when they do want to get him out into routes, that's where the big mismatch is going to be because Justin Reed, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil, all these guys haven't been great in coverage. They haven't been closing the space very fast. And if you want to slow down Kirk Cousins, you're going to have to make him move, progress through his reads, start to feel uncomfortable. You give him that little outlet pass over and over again, he's going to take it. And he will work his way right down the field, taking those little Costco price gains and all the way down there to get into field goal range.
The leading receiver in the Eagles game for the Falcons was not Drake London. He of first round pedigree. It was actually Darnell Mooney, one of the free agent signings for the Falcons. One thing I'm kind of curious about is how the Chiefs weaponized Trent McDuffie this week, because I don't think if you want to treat Drake London as the wide receiver one for this team, he's not a good matchup for Trent McDuffie. And I don't anticipate that you're going to line Trent McDuffie up across from London. Mooney might make more sense, even though he's probably more profiling as your wide receiver 2 type player. Presents a, kind of an interesting perspective. Do we see Trent McDuffie lining up in the slot a little bit more this week? What do you think that we see the Chiefs do with some bigger pass catchers in this game, Hamilton? How do you think Trent McDuffie gets weaponized this week?
That is a great question because it really was. It was Mooney that killed the Eagles defense. And you're right. Drake London is not, not that he's not a good player. He's not somebody who scares me to the point where I want McDuffie on him at all times. I think with him being a bigger bodied guy, he's someone even like, to use Josh Williams on him a little bit more. Like I think that's a matchup where I like him. It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question that I don't have like a direct answer to. I think like Matt was saying before, they don't have anybody I think that you need to worry about to that degree where you're game plan specific, like let's get McDuffie on them. So I think it's going to give us a sense too of, how they really want to use him this year, in the way that best suits the defense as a whole versus just let's try to shut out this specific player.
Yeah, I think Drake London's still probably clearly like their number one wide receiver and the guy that like you want to stop first and foremost. And so theoretically, you're going to take Trent McDuffie, who's been one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL this year, against good competition in Zay Flowers and Jamar Chase, and put him on him. But there's a significant size gap there, even more so than like Jamar Chase, excellent catch point receiver. He's made his NFL career off of doing that, but he's still like right around 6 feet tall. Drake London is not. He is bigger and taller. So you want to just throw some jump balls to Drake London with Trent McDuffie on him, who has had issues defending vertical passes over his shoulder and where his like lack of arm length has shown up at times. I get the theory. And I would have been coming into the year, I would have said, this is maybe a matchup where I don't know if I want McDuffie on him all the time. We have put him in the slot, let him go back to blitzing, let him shut down all these, let him help on Kyle Pitts, let him help on Bijan Robinson and be kind of that weapon. But after seeing what he did to Jamar Chase, again, I know it's a little different, but he held up with the physicality. He didn't get bullied. Like that ridiculous defensive pass interference where I thought he was quite simply just bullying Jamar Chase around until Jamar Chase fell. But even if you want to call that, like he didn't get beat up when he tried to press him. He made plays on the football around him. He was able to tackle him one-on-one in space. Like he held up to one of the most physical wide receivers in the NFL, despite giving up some size. You want to line him up one-on-one with Drake London at times? Go for it. Or if you want to mix it up and have him play more in the slot this particular game because you don't love that matchup, you don't feel like you need to erase a Drake London based on the way they're playing, you now have this versatility. So yeah, this is the first time they're going to have a matchup of a wide receiver that I don't know if you're sitting here going, we need Trent McDuffie on this guy. Maybe they do move him around a little bit more, and maybe it's a little bit more 50-50 split between slot or out wide and doing different stuff.
Yeah, I'm interested in because, it's not 6 foot, 200 pound Jamar Chase. It's 6'4", 213 pound Drake London. And like, we already know the arm length concerns with Trent McDuffie, which is part of the reason that the Chiefs were able to draft him at pick 21. Maybe even partially why he doesn't have as much ball production necessarily in his career, but is amazing at everything else, is because this is a kind of a sawed off at the arms cornerback that maybe doesn't have, the kind of length to also be able to challenge. And I think that's something that's worth paying attention to is, those measurables are a lot for him to take on. So I'm kind of fascinated what the Chiefs ultimately decide to do with the Drake London problem and plenty of other problems for them to deal with Bijan and Kyle Pitts. Let's move on to players to watch. Ooh. Hamilton, who you got on the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs?
We've touched on him a little bit already, but I'm going Leo Chenal. I think, I think Bijan is priority number 1, 2, and 3 with this offense. Not disrespecting Drake London or Kyle Pitts by any means, especially with some of the issues Chiefs have had against tight ends. But Bijan, again, the versatility that he brings to it, what he's going to be able to do in the pass game, in the run game, between the tackles, we've seen Leo be phenomenal this year when it comes to stopping their own. So really looking forward to that matchup. And we're really going to get a sense of how good this Chiefs run defense really is up against this Falcons rushing attack.
No, that's a great one. He's quickly, listen, more 4-point fullback stance is all I ask. More linebackers playing 3-tech and 4-point fullback stances is all we need. My player to watch in this one, secondary pass rushers. We talked a lot about the pass rush getting to Kirk Cousins. I'm taking a combo here. George Karlaftis actually, I think, leads the Chiefs with pressures, but they're all coming so late into downs. And a lot of that is skewed because when you play Lamar Jackson, the way the Chiefs played him, the defensive ends aren't really trying to get after him. They're just trying to keep him in the pocket. So like the numbers are skewed, I think, for that. However, I do think that I was kind of hoping George Karlaftis would take another step forward this year so far as a pass rusher. I would have liked to see him have some more frequent, quick success against a guy like Trent Brown last week when they were going up against him after the struggles he had against the Patriots in week 1. So I would like to see a good game from George, show off some, quick wins, to show off some of the hand technique that you flashed at the end of the previous season, all that work with Tom Bahali in the offseason. It's in there, and he's going to be an impact player. It's just, let's have it happen not 3 seconds into the play for this game because Kirk Cousins is going to get the ball out. And then for my money, the guy that's been the next best pass rusher on the team after Chris Jones, Tershawn Wharton. I think he's been excellent on the interior. That's kind of given them a really good 1-2 punch. All that help's going to go to Chris Jones. Tershawn Wharton's getting a lot of one-on-one blocks from guards, and he's got that lateral quickness back where he can cross a guy's face in the blink of an eye. And I do think that these guards for Atlanta, the way they've played earlier this year, Lindstrom's a great player, Bergeron's had flashes, but so far this year, both the Steelers and the Eagles have had success getting those guys on the inside. So those one-on-one matchups with Turk, get that interior pressure on an immobile Kirk, that could be a big impact for this game.
I think I'm talking myself into Trent McDuffie playing in the slot more this game just to help account for Bijan. I think the great point you made is like being able to blitz a little bit more. And, the biggest threats are probably in the middle of the field with the Pitts and a Bijan. So let's just go ahead and slap Jalen Watson onto Drake London. And that's going to be my player to watch because I think they could just I think they could throw Jalen Watson onto Drake London. Physically a better fit to line up against that big-bodied receiver. It frees Trent McDuffie up to blitz a little bit more, to be more of a factor in the middle of the field. So let's go Jalen Watson as a guy, trying to lock up Drake London. I'm convinced. I've gone through the process and now I'm convinced. Let's move on. Game prediction time. Matt Hamilton, what you got for this game?
I think the Falcons are a team that we're going to see getting better week after week after week. So, I know there are some people who still aren't sold on Kirk and the offense and what they're doing. I think you hit it on the head, Ken. I think that 2-minute drive is going to be big for them, and building confidence for this offense going forward. That does have a lot of newness to it with Zach Robinson taking over as the OC. With Kirk in there coming off of an injury, there was a lot going on. So I'm trying not to judge them too harshly based on what we saw through those first, hour and 58 minutes of their season. But so I do think they keep this close. I think they keep it competitive. I do think we see some points put up on both sides. I'm going to say 31-24 Chiefs in this one.
I'm going back and forth in my head here. This is one of those games early-ish in a season where the Chiefs maybe haven't looked super clean, and specifically offensively, haven't looked super clean, but they've played some AFC teams that you might expect to see later on. And Andy Reid typically, I don't want to say hold stuff back, but tries to keep it a little vanilla. He doesn't want to give those guys that he's going to see again a big thing. And then you have this random game against an NFC team, usually a little bit before the bye week or in the middle of the year. It's an NFC team that they don't anticipate seeing, and he kind of unloads. I think like the 49ers game a couple years back where it was just, the offense after a quick interception did whatever they wanted to, right? Like a game like that where it's just like an offensive explosion. Everything's going to be okay because that's there. I kind of wanted to predict it for this game, but I'm also looking forward. There's another NFC game with the Saints right before the bye week that's at home. This defense that the Falcons run, I think, is going to be a lot predicated on stopping explosive plays, maybe kind of daring the Chiefs to run without Isaiah Pacheco. They might try to essentially do what the Bengals did and just say, hey, you want to run for 4 yards per carry against us all the way down the field? We'll play some red zone roulette and see if we can stop you and hold you to a couple field goals. See if you try to get impatient. So I think it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle than I was originally thinking, but I think the Chiefs work their way through. The defense, I think, is going to do a good job against the Falcons offense. I think the Chiefs are going to take this one. We're going to call it 24-13. But like it won't ever feel like they're blowing them out. They'll just kind of seem like a better team throughout the whole game.
I think 2022, the Chiefs boat raced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in similar fashion. Another NFC South opponent. They were up like 21-3, 28-10 on old Tom Brady, and smoked them on national television in the first quarter of the season. But I've kind of been going back and forth on some of that too, Maddie. If this offense really just starts to find a rhythm this week, they've put a lot of different things on tape in the last couple of weeks. Is this a week where, you start paying some of that stuff off and, getting some of those tendencies broken so you can create some and generate some explosive plays and all that? And I saw someone on Twitter today, and that was a great thought. It's something that I've kind of decided I'm not picking blowouts this year. And I think we've just had too much of a sample size to say, like, this team's not going to go out and win a game by 17. It's always going to be close. It's going to be tight. NFL close. It's never going to be a true blowout. And, 7 points, a 7-10 point box is what they're going to be operating in. The line's only 3.5 on this game too. This is projected to be a pretty tight game. I was kind of surprised by that, but I mean, hey, Atlanta at home, Kirk Thuggins balling out this last, Monday Night Football. I think this is going to be a close one. I think there will be some signs on offense that you're excited about. I think the Chiefs do generate an explosive play. I'm going to go 24-21. Chiefs win the game. It's a close one. And I don't think it's like a late touchdown by the Falcons. I think it's a legitimate close game, and the Chiefs, do what they do at the end of close games and finish this thing out. So that's what I'm predicting. That is going to do it for the Wednesday episode of the KC Laboratory. For Matt Hamilton and Matt Lane, I'm Matt Swanson. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.